Hi, I'm Jim Fossone with Legal Help for Veterans. I'm one of the attorneys here working on VA disability claims, and we're here to talk a little bit today on VA Lost My Records. Now, there's two types of lost records. We're going to talk about the Great Fire in St. Louis, and we'll also talk about regular lost records. But in terms of the lost records due to the fire, sometimes you'll hear this as an excuse as to why the VA can't process your claim. The Department of Defense, actually the National Personnel Records Center, NPRC, had a fire in St. Louis, Missouri in July of 1973. Certain records were lost in this large archive at that time. These were original documents, paper copy documents. 80% of the Army records from 1912 to January 1960 were lost in the fire. For the Air Force, they lost 75% of the records from the names Hubbard through the letter Z for people from 1947 to 1964. So there was a great fire, but sometimes that fire gets used as an excuse for why they aren't processing your claim. You might say, well, I don't fit into any of those dates or names, and therefore my records should not have been lost in the fire. So we do hear that all the time. But what can you do about it if that's one of the excuses being used for why your claim can't be processed? You may have copies of your own records that you can give to VA. Your DD-214, for example. You may have copies of orders that you had. There's also the way to go have the DOD through VA pull unit records. We've submitted photos that the veterans have had. Certainly the Vietnam guys sent them home to mom and the girlfriends. You pull those together to establish that you were in country in Vietnam. So there are a lot of ways. Buddy statements would be another one to reconstruct what was lost in records in the fire in St. Louis. So don't give up if you're told your records were destroyed in the fire. A, maybe they really weren't. B, there's a way to reconstruct some or many of those records. And C, there's those ancillary ways in which to establish the service records, like what your buddies can say, unit records, letters home, those sorts of things, photographs. So don't give up on them. The other thing we hear a lot of from our veterans is, I've already sent this into VA and they've lost my records. When we talk to the regional offices, they tell us it takes them months. When you send them a letter, to get it from the mailroom into your file will take months, 90 days, 120 days. So it may be that the record's not lost yet. It may have not made its way from the mailroom into your file. But indeed, we do find, and we hear this all the time years later, that records are lost. So never send VA records without keeping copies. VA doesn't scan these records. They don't have digital backups. You should. When we send them in as your advocate, we have copies of those, because when they come back and ask, wow, you never sent that form in. You never told me there was a change of address. You never told me the guy got married or divorced. You never told me that this doctor gave this opinion about his problem. We'll be able to establish that indeed we mailed this to you. Generally, it's years before, and when VA says those records were not received and they got lost. We've all heard stories of shredding problems at regional offices. VA is trying to fix that, but indeed there was a period of time, and rather than actually file the paperwork, they were shredding it. And so I'm not really sure those constitute lost records, but we do hear that from VA at times. So if VA lost your records, there's ways to solve the problem. Plan ahead is one of them. And we at Legal Help for Veterans are there to assist you in working up your veterans' disability claims. You can contact us at the 800 number that's on our website or on the contact form. And thank you for your service.